Okay, good evening and welcome to the special meeting of the Orange Board of Finance. Today's Monday, June 6, 2022, the 77th anniversary of D-Day. Anyway, we'll start the meeting by having everyone introduce themselves, beginning on my right.
Kevin Moffett.
We'll skip the chief for now.
I was going to let him introduce himself. John Cifarelli, Finance Director.
Kevin McNabola.
Jim Leahy.
Kevin Houlihan, thank you, and I forgot to say, call the meeting to order at 7:31. Okay, item number 3, public participation. Jody? Yeah.
Jody Deach, this isn't working, is it?
I think you got to use this one.
Really?
Yeah, okay.
Wait a minute, we should be, before you start, Joe, let's make
he's
it
out.
comfortable. This is not right.
Yes, it is, thank you.
Okay, sorry. All right, Jody Deach, 601 Harborview Road. I am here regarding the Amity budget. One of the points I'd like to make, which a few of us who have run for office previously have made, that the town of Orange has anywhere from a 16 to 20% surplus at any given year. It has been paid down to help lower our tax rate this year, whereas one of the issues that people are saying they won't vote for the budget is because Amity is running a surplus. Amity's surplus is about 1%. The town is 16%. So if we're complaining about surpluses, I'm not sure why people voted for the Orange budget if a surplus is the issue. And I also find it very frustrating every year when this board in particular does a presentation that year after year after year is anti-Amity. I think you should be presenting the facts and not presenting your opinions. And I think this is something that needs to be addressed by this board in the future. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Deborah Kidder, 936 Green Circle in Orange. The Orange Board of Education asked for and received a 3% increase in its budget for next year. Not only did the Orange education system budget pass, it passed on its first vote, as did the budgets in Bethany and Woodbridge, our neighbors who also feed the Amity Regional School District. Orange also has a number of state and federal grants that they are still appropriating and spending into next year.
I'm sorry. It's good to have more for people at home here.
Thank you. Yet there was, to my knowledge, no attempt to reject or challenge the Orange District's budget increase, which, as a parent with one child in Orange, I was very glad about. With my older child at Amity, however, I have grave concerns for his senior year of high school. I ask that we allow Amity, not the Board of Finance of one of the 3 towns whose students enter their system, to establish their budget in the best way they can to educate our kids. How can an increase of 0.41% possibly cover the contractual obligation of a 2.5% increase in teacher salary? Amity is the expert on educating the grades 7 through 12 population, not the Board of Finance of any one town. Why is it that the elementary system asked for and received what they needed to educate our younger children, but the Amity system gets this divisive nonsense? Yes, I understand how the surplus and the over-budgeting works. What I do not understand is how the same families can be so divided on the subject of educating their older kids. Has anyone asked why you want to hold on to more of that money? Is there something more important than Amity education that you want to spend it on?
Thank you.
Hello, Rob Lim, 956 Corncob Lane. I have in my hands the latest Milford Orange Times featuring the Orange Board of Finance update, courtesy of Mr. McNabola. It is a very well-reasoned explanation of why state budget reserves matter. And, I mean, it makes the point that you really need to build that cushion to prepare for uncertainty. So just to kind of describe, states were early, sorry, maybe I'll just jump to the interesting part here. To me, it says, with inflation at 40-year highs and disruptions to the supply chain, it will be important for Connecticut and all states to first closely monitor their reserves and have a forward-looking fiscal approach in conducting long-term budget projections. Now, Amity, for those who are not familiar with the way their finances work, they're not really able to carry a budget reserve year to year. So what we call the surplus is actually their cushion, right? And I think Mr. McNabola makes a very good point about why it's important to be fiscally wise, to try drawing down on a surplus early on, as he explains in this piece, and really make sure that the school or the state or the town can conduct itself, and be prepared for any kind of emergencies. The other thing that's on my mind is, I think about the grand list. The grand list is where a lot of the funding for the town comes, and a lot of it is based on the real estate values of the properties, right? So we all get taxed on the value of our properties, which all went up during the pandemic. And it makes me wonder, shouldn't we be talking more about how we develop our town into being more attractive to businesses and residents to make them come here? Because I really, me personally, our family came here for the schools. We love the open character of Orange. We love the people of Orange. We're really happy to have settled here, but I'm just really worried about our son, who's in 5th grade now at Tricky Hill. What's his future going to be like when he's at Amity? And I really want everybody to consider this in terms of how we go about supporting our schools, making the town attractive to young families like us, and kind of building the orange of, extending the orange of the past into the future in this anniversary year. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Alexandra Onuf, also at 956 Corn Cob Lane. Switching them out here.
Yeah, this one's just kind of being a little temperamental.
Really wants to be in front, though.
You can take over. I'm gonna
Okay.
switch the batteries.
Okay. So you just heard my husband speak, and I'd just like to add to some of the things that he said. I'm also concerned about the Amity budget and the fact that it has failed at referendum twice. And I think one of the reasons that people, particularly in the town of Orange, have been voting no is in part because of the recommendation of this board that Amity does not need more than a 0.41% increase next year. And I'm struggling to understand how it is that this board came to that recommendation, which is being taken so seriously by so many in our town. And I wonder if it, and I know you can't tell me, like this isn't a conversation and a dialogue, but I'm concerned if it didn't take place in conjunction with Amity's administration, because it does seem to me that they should be the ones driving decisions about pedagogical positions and lines, including new faculty that will be teaching middle school electives, for example, that they should be the ones to be deciding whether they need a new or an additional security guard at the high school, whether they need, as they have said that they do, a chief information security officer because of the cybersecurity that's being required of them for their insurance. Those seem to me things that should be in their purview to decide. And I struggle to understand how it is that the Orange Board of Finance, which is one of 3 of the towns that are responsible for providing the funding to the school district, came to the decision that 0.41 is sufficient given all of those requirements. Some of them new. And as Deborah mentioned, also, of course, the increases to teacher salaries and these other kinds of obligations. I'm concerned because it seems like those who are voting no may be doing so on the basis of your recommendation. And I'm concerned that it wasn't made necessarily with the best pedagogical purview for the school and for Amity's district as a whole. That hasn't been fully explained, I think, to me. I would note further that the town of Bethany voted in favor of the last referendum. The first select person in Woodbridge has come out in support of the budget. And I would urge you to consider supporting the upcoming referendum with the reduced 3.19% increase for the Amity budget. And so that would allow Amity administrators to determine their staffing and budgetary needs, their curricular and personnel decisions. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. We will move on to, I need a motion,
I'll give you a motion to move 6 up to number 4.
6 to 4. Well, I need a second.
Second.
Second by Kevin. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained. Okay, so now the new number 4, funding request, allocate funds for Faro crash scene laser scanner and software with drone mapping software.
So basically, this equipment that we're requesting is to replace outdated equipment that we currently have to do, for the most part, major accident investigations in which there's serious injuries or fatality. The equipment that we have now is obsolete. It's in need of repair. It's over 10 years old, and it is not state-of-the-art any longer. So when you think about a major crash, basically, it's something that is going to be scrutinized very heavily in both criminal court potentially as well as civil court. And there's a strong need to get it right. And this software helps us to do that. And it also, it uses laser technology to map out the scene of a crash. And it does it in a very short period of time. So sometimes when you're at the scene, the outdoor elements, evidence could be fleeting. This would allow us to capture the evidence in a much quicker time period, protecting that evidence, and also allows our officers to clear that scene much quicker and to open up the road for the motoring public much quicker. So it is to replace the equipment which is really not functional, the equipment that we have now. And in addition to crash scenes, it could also be used for crime scenes. Depending on the nature of the crime, anything that needs to be measured and mapped out, it allows us to do that for any kind of a scene. And included with the software is also drone mapping software, which allows us to use our drone to do flyovers. Now, we currently use our drone to do flyovers and take photographs to document the scene. This does that, but it does it with longitude and latitude, and it takes multiple pictures very, very quickly. And what the software does is creates 3D images of the scene, whatever that scene may be. So not only do we have photographs to document what happened, but we have an actual reconstruction of the event in 3D virtuality. So that's what we're looking to do. The equipment is called Faro. It is state-of-the-art. And this was a project that we submitted through short-term capital. And now I'm here requesting funding for it.
And excuse me, it's available?
Yes.
That's why I think there's move up meetings for things to, just because of the supply chain problems, to get things,
John, do we have
ordered.
documentation that Chief is reading from? I don't know. I had it.
That went to the Oakenquist committee. I didn't hand that out to anybody.
So it was on that list.
It was on that list.
But it didn't make the cut
It
of the
didn't
8 that we did last
It didn't
time.
make the cut at the time. What I'm suggesting is we have money in his salary accounts for this year that you'll allow me to transfer, is it 50,000, Bob, up to 50,000?
Yeah, up to 50,000.
Up to 50,000 from the salary accounts to purchase this. I think it's a good use of money that's in the current budget without having to hit our capital fund or any other fund for it. And it keeps the money in the police department, use of the money in the police department budget.
right.
And it's really something they need.
Agree?
Yeah.
So that would basically be the motion, allow me to transfer up to 50,000 from police salary accounts to purchase this far no crash scene laser scanner and software with drone mapping.
Yeah, I'll move to approve.
Motion by Kevin,
I'll second.
second by Kevin. If there was a third, we could have another Kevin. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, unanimous.
Thank you very much,
Chief.
and have a good night.
Thanks, Chief.
You too. Sorry to keep you.
Yeah, my bad.
Something just went off.
I'm not sure.
Or I got a flash in the eyes or something.
No, it happens sometimes, but it's kind of a
Can we
little
get a
bit.
5-minute break,
Yeah.
just real quick? And Kevin, go see Bob,
What's that?
go see Bob.
Okay.
Okay. Was there,
right.
somebody make a motion for a
Motion for a
5-minute break?
5-minute break.
Second.
Okay.
All those in favor, aye. Kevin was leaving, but he said aye.
Hey, so,
Okay,
know,
we're
we're talking
back
a minute.
at 7:59, so we'll move on to item number 5, which was the old number 4, Amity update. Joe's not here. Jim, do you want to speak to any of
Yeah,
that, or do you
I
want to
can,
wait to?
because there's two parts that I have. So this would be the old number 4 Amity update, right? So I went to the May 31st, the Amity Board of Education meeting. And I don't know, did I send you guys the slides from that meeting?
I don't think so.
Okay, I can
Yeah, I
send
thought
them
you
to you
did.
after
I
this
thought you
meeting. Let me just write down some next steps I'm gonna have. And the structure of this meeting was a presentation by the superintendent, and then 30 minutes of people who were for the referendum that we have coming up on June 14th, and 30 minutes from people who were supporting the vote no concept for the referendum from June 14th. And what I can show you is, and I don't think we have to dwell too much in it, but this is the file. And I'll just present the slides, but I think I know what my thoughts are, on a global basis. But what was given is possible non-instruction. So what was happening at the meeting? Let me frame it for you. So the superintendent's, the purpose of the meeting is okay, we're at a certain percentage increase, 3.59. What does the Amity Board of Education, this board, that night, want to recommend for a number lower, a percentage lower than that? And there was a reminder strongly, I think it's in these slides, that was their job, Amity Board of Education, to come up with a number. It is the superintendent's job to determine what the exact reductions would be. And so these are slides that suggested possible reductions. I think we can see things, I mean, you can read it, right? Cutting the medical reserve down to 20%. Some of us have the belief it could live with less than 20% reserve. But anyway, that would be the reduction, $37,000, the second one down. And then on the right-hand side was what it would mean in an overall reduction. OPEC hadn't been funded at all the last years at Amity. It was, they're now leaving it apparently at 150, that was a reduction, 17,232, et cetera. All right, legal services, a reduction. School health aid, a reduction. And again, as we would think of it, it's a reduction of the increase that they're asking for, okay? Kev, you good? You got the, Kev?
Yes.
I know you do, but I just want to be, we're not
Yep, yep.
rushing through this. Some more, late buses, STEAM day, high school intern, and there was a few comments made about each. Then, if it happened to go to a further reduction, then these are what was put out there by the superintendent that would be possible reductions if we had to go further, all right? Even though we hadn't really established what those reductions would be because the board had yet to come up with what they would ultimately inform the superintendent what they wanted the reduction overall to be. So I just want you to see them, security officer, cybersecurity technician, Amity High School SRO, student assistance counselor, possible reduction of middle school athletics and definition of those and amounts. Pay-to-play model, I wasn't aware myself that this was happening in other districts. And then other comments about it, what it's worth, you can see it in the slide. I'll send this package to you. And other reductions of instructional instructions, and various amounts, okay? And then finally, some other possible reductions in the amounts. You can see them right there. Now these, I think I got to all of them. No, so that's all of the reductions. Remember, these were being, as I'm sitting there looking at this, I was saying to myself, well, these would be reductions in what they already have in this year's budget. That's the way I took this, okay? So, and then she commented about the surplus. I'll have more to comment about that in my vice chairman's update. But there was a mention that there was a state thing, I don't know if it's hit yours in Meriden, Kevin, but the state had come up with their reimbursement rate. I think it was 75%. In the Amity forecast, it was 73%. Anyway, I'm remembering $30,000 to $40,000 increase in what the increased revenue would be projecting for the next year. So that was what I remembered. Again, this is online, you can see it, all right? So that's what I heard. Now, this is what I heard when the people who voted yes came up. And I'm going to have some comments under my vice chairman's report, but I heard the following words. There's fear-mongering out there and misinformation. That was the person number 2 who talked. Person number 5 started talking about holding their children hostage for political purposes. There was denigration of the 0.41% proposed. There was also an unfavorable reference to the quote, doing more with less thought. That was person number 5. Now, person number 7 started talking about a vocal minority. I actually have heard that stated about me. And now I'm hearing it stated by a person for the budget in public session last week. I started hearing that persons, I even heard from a person tonight, that a surplus is required. I saw a number of what I would guess to say middle school, early high school students, but whatever, students, very concerned. And frankly, if I were in their position and I had heard the word cuts, I'd be concerned too. And that's what they were concerned about, cuts. One went so far as saying we were stealing from our schools, person number 11. So that's the flavor I got when I was at the Amity meeting, and I chose not to, although I was next in line to speak, when the 30 minutes total was up, which was the agreed time span for both the yes components and the people who are voting behind voting no. So this is what I observed and the slides that we used that particular night. So if the team has questions for me that I wasn't clear about, I can elaborate further, or that's up to you guys. Kevin?
Sounds good.
No, that's fine, yep.
So
Now, this was the yes people?
No, this was the superintendent
Oh, okay,
presenting,
okay.
how it went this way. These slides by the superintendent,
Okay.
okay? And then 30 minutes for one side, the yes side went first. I think there was, my mind count, 14, 15 people. And then there were a similar 30 minutes for the no side to give a
Gotcha.
name,
Okay,
okay?
yep.
And
thank
I'll
you.
send you these slides for your files if you
Can you
want.
just roll that up a little bit more?
How, John? Oh, I see,
I'm
Roger.
just trying to get the total number of dollars there.
139, I think.
So does that equal 200?
No, 139.3.
So I think their cuts that came down to us were 200,000 in total.
Well, hold on, let's
So
remember.
where's the rest?
This presentation, 30 minutes of yes comments, right? 30 minutes and no
So
comments.
this isn't defined what they
No, no.
finally voted on?
Then they went into session, the board, and then whatever they discussed, they discussed. We did not stay, I did not stay. And it was online, so it's available for seeing, right? And then they eventually, remember what I said, the superintendent said you could come down to a number, Amity Board of Education. You don't say specifically what will be cut to get to that number. The number they came down to, I'm aware now, was 3.19%.
Okay.
And that's probably what you're referring to.
Right, because.
And it's not
they're-
these
the
particular.
The first referendum was $100,000 to our budget effect. The second one, now it's gonna be another 100, so with us 50% of
Yeah,
the
we
budget.
understand.
So
that's
it's
not
400 from the very start until now.
Right.
Right, okay, so this was just a presentation, remember, I just wanna make sure anybody at home seeing it. Presentation given by superintendent. But she at the front end said, this is some possibilities. Then she said, but she very much at the front end told the board that you're gonna make a recommendation of a number, or percentage really, and, which translates to an increase. And this is some options that I've been thinking about, all right? And then you had the 30 minutes, and then they went into session, and then they decided whatever they decided.
So I'm just a little confused here. They don't dictate to her what should be cut in the budget?
That's my problem. They should.
That's a whole different issue.
Under the
I'm
state
trying to report
statute,
out
they
what I
have the
heard.
power, not her.
Oh,
And they're,
okay.
and she's
I mean,
a
It
dictator.
sounds like they're giving up their power and they're
Yeah.
saying, cut another down to whatever, 3.41% or whatever it is. And they don't, I won't say they won't care what it is, but they seem to be walking away from what it is as a board.
That's a rather big issue, and it's non-mathematical
I mean,
or
that's not the
non-budget.
way we do it here. I mean, you tell me you want this cut or you don't want this cut. It's not. Okay.
It doesn't seem to be in the history of Amity, but if we get into that thing rather than the numbers, I think it could be a long night. So I just wanted to keep with what I observed, what they eventually ended up with, okay?
Okay.
And that's where they are right now, 3.19.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, and there is another detailed budget that came out. I don't think I have it as a PDF yet, but I think I can get it. If I get it, I'll send it to you guys, even if you already have it, but I do not have it yet. It didn't get distributed to me.
It was supposed to be distributed today to the town clerks. I don't know if it got there or not.
Okay, all right. So that's the end of the item, Kevin,
For the update.
for the Amity update, right. Now, I did put together some slides, because I really felt there was some suggestions by the people here, and even some by the people tonight, that this board spent a lot of time looking at charts, looking at the Amity data, spending 2 hours with Amity administration over that, which has been not particularly well reported by people on the Amity board in fact, and only looking at one sliver of a January 24th meeting, in which all of us, having gone through, I think Kevin once told me, how many times do we have to go through these charts, Jim, right? The Amity charts, right? I myself might be thinking that sometimes. But anyway, what I put together is a short presentation. I think it's fact-based 100%, and I am calling it Budgets 101. Third version, you know how I get version control. I'll give you the bottom line up front, team. And so I'm now speaking to the members of the Board of Finance, but if anybody at home is watching, I'm also speaking to you. Amity has a very long history of wasteful surpluses. In the last 4 years, it's been $3 million a year. Audio okay, Chris? Good, thank you. I have heard non-factual statements about next year's Amity budget, and I know it's being circulated, and perhaps with a fair amount of emotion. Now, when I hear those statements, I think of my mother, who had 8 children. And I am not unhappy with any mother who is worried about something that they think is being cut from their children's budget. I'm not unhappy with them at all. I am extremely unhappy with people who encourage those statements and who, at the same time, know better or should know better. And I'll make that clearer as we get through these charts. Third bullet, Amity is using a budgeting process, we've talked about this, that sustains this waste of surpluses. The goal of this presentation is to provide all taxpayers, all towns, teachers, parents, students, a fact-based understanding about budgets and the current fiscal year 22-23 Amity budgets. The conclusions that you'll see in this presentation up front are this. No cuts, zero, nada, are required from the current budget. You may make a decision to, we'll modify this a little bit. But all the things that are in the current budget, there's ample room for them in the next year's budget. Second conclusion, the desired increases, this list of things for which we need increased money, which right now is approximately $1,651,000, can be covered by the funding in the current budget. And I'll show you that in a second. Without any budget increase, there would still be a sizable surplus in fiscal year 22-23. And the Orange Board of Finance still supports a 0.41% increase for Amity that would still result in over a $500,000 surplus. All of the details that support this are in this presentation, so why don't we get into it? Any further thing, guys, before we go forward? Okay. First of all, the basics. What's a budget? Budget's what you're going to spend your money on. Yeah, you're going to have revenue to cover it, and those are the 8 major expenditure categories at Amity. All right, those of us who look at their data monthly, like all of us, all right, know this. Secondly, at the end of the year, we have 2 parts. Now, I made the parts not in proportion to their actual size, so you could actually see them. But you actually either spend the money or you're going to have a surplus. All right? Now, as you move forward, most people think of a new budget as being something that is totally built on the prior year's budget. And we're going to call that in blue an increase. Now, let's talk about these surpluses in Amity, and particularly those who might be new to town. You might not have known some facts. Here are the facts. This has been shown how many times in this meeting, team? Since last September? 10?
At least.
Okay, at least. Over the years, you can see that we have had surpluses. Common occurrence, should be there. Should be there. We don't want them operating at the thin margin of, will I have enough money? That's not what we're doing here. The surplus at Amity was $500,000. We wouldn't be having this time and effort in the conversation. But it's not. As you can see, the average for the 12 years in blue was a little excessive. You'll notice this one here in 2010, 2011. The reason it was almost $2 million, which was almost unheard of back then, because John Brady, the superintendent, froze expenses. Remember, that was when we had the impact of 08, 09. We had, I don't know if Kevin, you remember the time, furloughs and all that kind of stuff, right? So what he did is freeze it, and as a result of freezing it, we had this massive surplus. That was massive back in the day. Then it started to be almost a standard million, but you can see over 12 years, it's 1.19 million, right? What we've had in the last 4 years is historic. We've had a $3 million surplus in each of the last 4 years. And as one person said to me, I've heard somebody make the excuse that it was because of COVID. Well, 1 year wasn't COVID, and if you had a COVID year that dramatically made that happen, Well, then he said to me, well, I would expect a $6 million surplus, whatever the number is. It isn't all because of COVID. A reasonable surplus, I think we all would agree, would be somewhere between 500,000 and 600,000, somewhere in that range. And that's what I put down there, the green line at the bottom. Okay? So that's what the surplus has been historically and what has been in the last 4 years. Now, let's talk about the Amity budget that we're currently in. This is important. The budget for this year is $51,698,207. That's the budget. Those are the 8 categories. We currently, at the end of April, have a surplus of $865,155. Now, that number is less than what Superintendent Byers announced on last week because she flipped in the awareness of the extra money from the state at 75% rather than 73% cap, which you're going to get merit in as well, right?
Yeah.
What I went with was, here's the reported out thing at the end of the month. The last end of the month we had was April. That's the data we have. A little bit busy chart. I'll read it as if you never saw it before, but what you're going to see is the months July through June. If you look at the bottom, you can see the fiscal years in different colors. What you're going to see in each of the months per those fiscal years is the level of surplus in that particular year. The point I was making in an article written for the Orangetown News and Woodbridgetown News is that when the elected town officials vote on the following year's budget, they are looking at a surplus that looks somewhat like, luckily, February, because you don't get the February data till second week of March, and that's when you absolutely have to vote on the budget. And you don't, usually, as a voter in a town, and that's if you have this information. This isn't, we can get it, but I'm not sure the voters get it. In April, we only have the March data before we have to vote in early April. What we have right now, however, is the April data. So I put a thin line over here in green. And I have the Excel file if all of you want to see it. But Kevin, what I did was, 3 Kevins, it's easy to get all your attention by using one word. I went back and said, okay, what's the ratio of the April reported surplus to the end of the year surplus? Because as we've all seen, it has this massive hockey stick phenomenon. We've all seen it. We all expect it. And what I found is it's exactly 2.5 times higher, which is in court. When you look at the size of the charts, you can see that. That's the math. Any questions on that? The 2.5 times? Because last time I had 3 times, but I was using March. So I just want to make sure your brains are up to speed. All right? All good? All Kevin's nodding? Okay, good. So, what did I do? In the footnote here, you'll see the surplus is 40% of the end of the year surplus. The April surplus is. So I took that and I did the math, and the surplus would be a little over 2.1 million, 2,166,888. So I said, well, let's just use 2 million, so it's easier on the brain. So I was being conservative. Okay? That's where the 2 million number comes from. Do you understand where that comes from, Kev? Mm-hmm. Kev, you good? Okay, good. So now let's take a look at next year's budget. Here's the way we're looking at it now. We have last year's budget of $51,698,207. And we're talking about an increase. Let's talk about that. We have the 3.19 that the Amity Board of Education and the superintendent came up with, which would be that level of increase. It's a little bit higher. It's actually $1,651,000. Our 0.41% increase is a little under $212,000. All right. Now, that increase heavily is including salary increases. I think it's $870,000. Benefits increase, I think that's like 400 something. I have the data. All right, new positions. Now, I'm not evaluating any new position here. I'm saying their increase includes a whole bunch of things, especially those that add up to 1,650,000. This is important. Do we understand that? Okay. What I am saying is this. Whoops. First of all, I'm going to say the realities in the header of this page. I'm going to say there are 4 realities. One is, last year in that 51,698,207, we spent money. That's the orange. Spend that money again on the same things. What we did last year, we do again. Okay? With no cuts in sports, no cuts to the late bus, no cuts to the STEAM day. You can choose to do it, but you're not being forced to do it. No cut to the high school intern, no cut to the stipend coaches, no cut to instructional supplies. And I have to tell you, I had seen online someone sent me a thing, vote yes for Gary. So I said, oh, it must be a teacher that everybody likes. Why, they're putting this guy out there as the poster child for, turns out to be Gary Lindgren, the former hockey coach. Good friend of mine. I wrote his resume, and he eventually landed at Amity. God bless America. But you do not have to cut anything because your actual costs are covered by your escrow costs. Second bullet. All those increases, remember we talked about those? For everybody. You got salary increases, you got benefits, new positions, increasing utilities. It all adds up to 1,650,000. We can fit it in with the surplus. Fits right in, doesn't it? Just like you said that night, Kevin, right? Back in January. The itemized items, I'm sure I could write it better. Itemized items of increase are covered by the surplus amount. Because the surplus is going to be 2 million or higher. I was conservative there. And it's only 1.6. Third point, there'd still be 350,000 left over. Right? 1,650,000, you'd have 350 left, and you're still at the same budget level as last year. 51,698,207. It's just math. Are we good so far, Kev?
Yep.
Finally, to those who don't know, this is not news. In the last 4 years, you see 4 years in front of you there, where you see in blue the amount of increase requested. You see how much surplus you had at the end of the year, which means you requested, for example, in 2017, $603,000 increase. And frankly, you didn't need it. It wasn't by any short margin. You didn't need it by the difference between the blue and the orange. That's known in the trade as way off. Okay, it happened once. Okay, next year, 587,000 increase. Still way off. $2.3 million surplus, etc. for the next 2 years. And the average is on the right. And in every year, the Amity school system provided educational services for its students. People went to college without a need in any particular year. You can't do this forever, right? For any increase in each of those years. And I don't know if everybody around town is aware of that. Not only that, this is not a totally new phenomenon. This is the same idea, only going back to 2006 and 2007. Which means that in most of these years, in an individual year, in that 1 year, you couldn't do it forever. You could, not recommending it, could have had a 0% increase and you still would have gotten by because your surplus was higher than your increase. Amity can do its job. I don't think a lot of people know that, but this group knows that. And now we're sharing it with more. You can still, look, vote whatever you want. But let's at least vote in light of the data. Now, as we can see, and we've just talked about, I may be off a little bit here, Deborah, that I think it's 16351, but it's grenade close for sure. Any budget increase only adds to the upcoming surplus of the forward year. Remember, we're trying to get away from this phenomenon. Surplus is waste. It's waste of a bad budgeting process. It's a waste of taxpayer money, right? And as you can see, it's not consistent with what Amity did until it started 4 years ago. So let's take a look what would happen if we went with each of these. If you had $1,651,000, I apologize, team. On this slide, I did not change the number 1649. You see it there, Deb? I did change it here, so error on me. I'll have to correct that. But if you increase the budget by 3.19%, you would end up, that whole increase would have to be surplus. You haven't done it. There's nothing in your budget else. And you would have a built-in surplus of over $2 million. In our number over here, we would have a built-in surplus. Now, how do you get that number? You take the amount of the increase and you add the 350 in the green, right? Still left over from the same budget amount that we had last year. So you, under the Amity situation, Board of Education situation, have 3.19, all right? You come up with a surplus, still built in, of over $2 million. I was surprised, and I know all three of my Kevin colleagues recommended a 0% increase at Amity, and we agreed to 0.41, but I can see why now, because they knew that they would have this built-in 350 there anyway. But we did recommend, we're not going to renege on it, $212,000 more, so you have $500,000 in surplus. That's the math. And not only that, I don't know how many of people in town know that inside every Amity budget is a $150,000 contingency item, which means if one budget item goes bump in the night, there's a pretty strong buffer. And Kevin, you and me about 4 years ago did an analysis, and we went through every line item in the budget asking ourselves how much variability there might be, right? And do you remember what conclusion we came to?
No.
And I did it too. We did it. Actually,
You did it with me as well.
and I don't remember myself. A little cloudy.
Well, it was not. You kept on asking, you guys do this for a living more than me, and I kept on saying, how much variability? And you kept on telling me, not much. And if it was variability, it would be on a downward scale, particularly in the salary account, which was a lot of the budget. Anyway, that's the data that I see. Now, those who want to really dive in, you can do a sensitivity analysis on the left over here, right, where you see the arrow. If the surplus on this current year's budget was this amount, then your actual spending is this. Here's your 3.19. You can see that if you had that increase, which is a little off there, remember it's 1649, it's really supposed to be 1651. I'll have to correct that. You'd have 3.6 million as an increase, which would be a real increase from what you actually spent in a year to your following year of over 7%. I don't see many companies doing 7% budget increases. I don't see many departments getting 7% budget increase. And that's what we would have here. In our model of the universe, hasn't changed, that the increase of 0.41% would be a 4.3% increase. It's advertised at 0.41 because it's budget to budget, but when you go back to actually spent to budget, it's 4.3. So if you have a need for more stuff at Amity, that adds up to the 1.6, you satisfied the need at 0.41%. That's the math. So in summary, it's the same statement we started with, so let's just knock right down to the conclusions. Again, the goal was to provide everybody, taxpayers, seniors, parents, teachers, students, a fact-based understanding about budgets and the currently annual Amity budget. Conclusions, you do not need to cut anything from your current budget. Any activity, zero. Your desired increase for 2022-23 can be covered, as we visually saw, by the expected funding in the surplus in the current year budget. Now, this doesn't have anything to do with what you do with the surplus money in the current year. That's a totally separate argument or discussion, really. So without any budget increase, there would still be a sizable surplus. That was the $350,000. And the support of a 0.41% increase still would result in over a $500,000 surplus, as I showed you in the last slide. Finally, 2 comments. Heard a lot about fear-mongering, holding kids hostage, vocal minority, cuts, stealing from our schools, anti-Amity, want facts, not opinions. We got 4 articles in the Orangetown News that are chock full of facts from which conclusions are made. You're entitled to your own conclusions or opinions. You're not entitled to your own facts. We are not against Amity. We sometimes feel, I think, working with them more difficult than working with the leadership at the Orange Elementary School, and I'd leave them with that. We're not trying to take away a surplus cushion. We're trying to get it down to reasonableness. And understanding how this board, my opinion, I'm going to ask each of you for your opinion, how we came to the conclusion we came to 0.41. I think we need to reiterate that for the people of our town, and we'll do that tonight. So that's one thing. We spent up to 65% of taxpayer money on education. On this chart, you can see on the right there, it's a total of 62.9. But both John and Kevin announced to me that that's only what we have as a budget when we do capital in the facilities. That would be other expenses that really go to education. So it's certainly higher than 62. I said approximately
Yeah,
65.
because we have to remember the town owns the elementary schools, so those costs are in the town budget.
Okay? So I just want to remind everybody in town, you know, we spend a lot of money on education. Now, one of our jobs, right, is to balance all these funding requests. Remember, and that's where we come up with, how do we figure out how to do more with less? We're Amity down to 0.41%. And I presented this slide at the town budget hearing back on April 21st. There is a significant difference from what the Amity budget request back then was, a $932,000 difference. Now, I know there are a lot of, we even have one for a selectman, for example. Very strong. Last 2 budget hearings, I have heard him say, well, got to pave more roads. Okay. $930,000 would pave about 15 streets and roads instead of having it sit in a surplus that's not needed. Additional documentation if you want it. If you go up in the town website, Board of Finance, there's 4 articles there, right up under the year 2022. So. So team, if I fairly represented how we came to our conclusion, I'll start with you, Kevin Moffett. I always use you as a starting point.
Yeah, this is just stuff we've gone over since.
For years.
Years, but in this particular case, since February. And you know, those are the numbers, you know, it's, as they say, you read them and weep. Those are actual numbers. Those aren't things that are made up, so.
Which chart would you speak to that which of these charts would words for you be best?
37.
Yeah,
Which one, Kev?
37.
37, that's with all the surpluses.
Okay, let me use this one then. This one here?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry, Kev, go ahead.
No, it just shows, there's a continuous pattern of these surpluses. And, you know, we started off this year, the original number that I recall was 7 point something. And then, you know, we had our, so like everything else, there's a negotiation, but there was never any negotiation. You know, they reduced it to 5 something,
4.92 was it?
yeah.
And compared to
And-
prior years, John Brady would come back each couple of weeks, it would come down.
Right.
This held firm for like 2 months.
Yeah, and this number, and the thing that I won't say annoyed, because that's not really fair, but $400,000 disappeared, poof, just like that. You know, when the first one was rejected. You know, and as we've said, we had a turnout, not only in Orange, but the other towns too, much larger than I've ever seen for either the Amity budget or, in our case, the town budget, than we ever had before, because you know, people are looking at the charts and looking at the numbers. And, you know, we're heading back to a year similar to the '08 situation again. You know, that's where the country is. So we can't.
It's heading to a recession type of thing.
Yeah. So, I mean, you know, we have to be sensitive to all that other stuff. People are making, with inflation and everything else, people, they're making the same amount of money, but everything is going up. Their utility bills are gonna be going up, you know, their food bills are gonna be going up. If you have multiple kids, you know, their clothes are, everything is going up. So we're trying to keep that under control. And this is our bit. And my feeling is, if we weren't doing this, okay, we wouldn't be doing what we were elected for. You know, I want to make it political, but that's the deal. They put us here to take a look at what the town and how the town's money is spent. And if we're not doing that, then we're not doing our job. So
All right,
that's me beating a dead horse, but.
okay. Kev?
Yeah, I mean,
Some
this,
slide you want me to put up?
yeah,
to
this
talk
chart
to?
is really a good indicator of the last 16 fiscal years for Amity. We've seen budgets range anywhere from, you know, $1.1 million, but up to the last 4 years, which have trended more in the $3 million range. So I think it's important to understand that I do think that Amity, at the end of the year, I'm okay with them having a surplus. But I think the surplus needs to be more in the range of between 6 and 750. And if they want to use additional funds for capital to invest in their schools, that's fine. If they want to use excess surplus funds to invest in funding their OPEB, which I guess they haven't done in a couple of years, I think that's fine. But we need to be in that range where we were back in 2000 and it looks like in the early 2007 era. We had
Yeah.
$489,000
Yeah, I'll go back to that
as a
chart
surplus
where it was earlier. It is
back
a
in
little bit,
05,
better.
06.
Yeah.
So,
Shows
I
it a
mean,
little better.
what's happened over the last 16 years is that number has just ticked up each year. Obviously, there's some anomalies over the course of the last 4 years. You did have COVID, so I do understand that factor. But to have, you know, the consistency that we've seen over the last 4 years has been more in the 2.8 to $3 million range versus the $500,000 to 750, which is, I think, kind of where we need to be. So.
Kevin? Is this the slide you want to talk to or a different one?
Yeah, the only thing, and I've talked to you about the data before, and I don't wanna obviously go back and recreate things, but the 2020, 2021, the 2.9 is really,
Oh, you're
it's
telling me.
short
It's
550,000, give or
500.
take, because of the money they put into the capital. And if they did that every year, all those numbers might be too small, but they're big enough. I go back 2008 with Dr. Brady, when we had the financial crisis, and we asked them, I've said this 100 times, to not add positions that year. They didn't care. They did it anyway. COVID, they were allowed to approve their own budget by the governor's orders. We asked, we sat in this room on Zoom, not in this room, on Zoom, is there anything you could reduce? Because we have 20% unemployment right now. The answer was No. 3,449.
Yeah.
The next year, we're here. We asked them again this year. Inflation, everything that's going on. And I believe what we said back in February, they have the money to run these programs, even with zero. It's there.
Well, they have the money for the school security
And we're not
officer,
bad
and the money
guys.
they have now.
No, they took the security officer out years ago and the town paid for it.
No, but there's one in there.
Oh, I know now, but
Yeah.
they threatened to take them out. It's never coming out.
Yeah.
I mean, they took them out in all these years, and the town paid for it. And it's like, we told Dr. Brady at the time, you have the money in your budget, it's $100,000 a year.
It's less.
And you got a, $1 million surplus going forward, and you can't pay for the officer, and the 3 towns did.
Oh, that's right, we only paid our half share. That's
Yeah.
right. Yeah,
So,
yeah, you're right.
I just, now's the time to be realistic, again. And that's just our 2 cents. Like Kevin said, we wouldn't be doing our job if we didn't do this.
Okay.
And to a gentleman who spoke earlier, where would the money go? It wouldn't be in the mill rate. It wouldn't go anywhere. You keep it in your pocket. If Amity didn't, if their increase, we are not gonna reallocate money somewhere else in the budget. We're just gonna go back to the taxpayer.
Anyway, so I threw together this presentation, and I've already mentioned, my own mother, and, this is the data. I'll just leave it at that. But what keeps me going is I have to envision that a mother who's concerned about their kid is just like my mom, concerned about me. And I happen to think they're getting bad information. This, I think, is straight information, fact-based. That's what I have for you, team. Any questions further? I'll send you this presentation.
The only thing I'll add is the fact that, there's been a consistency at Amity from an actual basis. On their actual basis, you presented a slide earlier that showed that the real Amity budget increase is like 8.2% if you base it off of actuals.
Right.
And they have had a consistent sustainability of being able to sustain operations at that level. So by having
This one
the
here.
amount of surplus in there, even with inflationary factors, they should be able to weather the storm quite easily, was what I'm saying,
Yeah.
And the fuel and diesel's locked in,
which is even better.
so that's.
Oh, yeah. How
that-
did that come about?
Well, they were very, based on timing, probably, right?
Yeah, no, we
Timing of
signed
the
a contract December, January.
We go to bid normally every December. It did go up from what we currently are, but it's in the $2, $2.25.
It's 223 and
Yeah, I don't
224.
remember
give or
exactly
take.
what it is. I mean, we're buying gas in the current budget at $1.75 a gallon, so.
It's a great rate, I mean.
Yeah, so that's what, the busing and none of that's impacted where you need another 300,000 for fuel because we're locked in.
Yeah, and
They
I got
go
With no
Yeah.
escalation
They-
unless the company goes bankrupt.
They go to our pumps down at Public Works Garage. They have a card for each of their buses. They fill up, and I believe once a month, Public Works bills them for the gallons. So I assume that's the same deal they have with their other buses for the other towns, in Woodbridge and
Yeah.
Bethany.
Yeah, and that card
Woodbridge and
system we
Bethany
put in
are all
years
part
ago
of
was,
the- yeah.
I remember we approved that was one of
And
the.
Woodbridge and
best things we
Bethany
did.
are part of the consortium. We all
Right.
did it
So Kevin,
together.
catch me up. So what's the rumor going around regarding diesel?
Well, that's, the costs are gonna go up in the budget because of, diesel being over $6 a
Right,
gallon.
right. That's a rumor going around?
Yes.
And what's
Well,
the
one
fact?
of the fact is it's a contract at $2.24 a gallon,
It's at a fixed rate, right.
Oh, okay.
which is in their budget,
Which is in their budget. Roger that.
so.
Okay. Anything else for me, team? Thank you, Kevin.
All right, I think item 7 is still item 7. Discussion, discussion and approval of minutes from May 9th, 2022, special meeting.
John, you batting lead off here, boss. You're in first place with those Yankees.
Don't jinx me.
Don't remind me.
Don't jinx me. Let me see what Okay, on page 3, where it starts with Mr. Nuzzo over there, where it says, Mr. Nuzzo made a motion to transfer a total of 50,000 from scratch dispatch software, should be 50,000 from utility clerk salary. And I believe that's all I have. That's it.
Page 4, tab top of the page. I circled something, let me see if I find it. Oh, a little typo, second line, first word, items.
Oh, yeah.
That's all I got, Mr. Chairman.
Anyone else? Is there a motion to approve as amended?
So moved.
Okay,
Kevin, second by Jim.
Sure.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstaining, unanimous. Item 8, review revenue and expense reports for May 2022.
You got a global comment for us, John?
It's pretty much the same as last month. We've now collected 295,000 more in taxes than
Saw
we
that.
budgeted.
Yeah.
I don't think we have any real problems here. I mean, we're gonna have a surplus for the year. We're count on that on the revenue side. We are gonna have to give $200,000, $203,000 back to the school for special education, but I haven't gotten that memo from them.
That's the standard
Yeah.
end of the
Yeah, we
year.
do that
That's
out.
That's
I'll
a
get
cost,
the special
yeah.
money back.
But we'll get 100 for the police special duty as well, right?
Yeah, could get more than that. There's been a lot of police special duty. That's just an estimate every year. That's for the benefit
How
part.
about that
The
public health nurse thing on the last
Same
page?
thing. It's for their benefit portion of their salaries.
So that'll come in.
Yeah, Art does, after the year end, Art does a
Roger that.
examination of police special duty,
Uh-huh.
OV&A, Park and Rec, and I think there's another one, sewers. And we'll get that money in.
Okay.
And UNH paid?
UNH made another payment without us chasing them for it.
How do you read that?
It's good.
No, I mean, what do you think's behind it?
I think they might have heard us talking about it, maybe, somebody.
They took it rough with COVID. They cut teachers, the
Oh,
professors'
all
salaries
those schools, when
by
COVID
20%.
came, they just cut teachers' salary. They didn't go around
Yeah,
saying,
I've got a couple
hey, how do you
people
feel
there.
about this? They just said, cut 10,
They-
20%.
Yeah, UNH was tough.
And I felt bad for
Hopefully
them
they're
because
back.
they didn't cut the administrator. I mean, if you cut, somebody's making 500 grand, you cut 10%, really? Right, you're making 70 grand and you cut 20%, that's real money,
Quinnipiac had that problem too,
yeah. I mean,
same way.
that's not the right way to run an organization, my opinion.
I don't know if I mentioned that we got a payment in from Race for Country Club, like they agreed to for the first year, one in, actually they agreed to one in June and one in September, and then the following year's all in September. So,
Okay. Hey, John, you know how I get confused when all of a sudden we start adding in all these capital project money and
Yeah,
usually
I did-
you have
know
some
what,
scratch there. and
because
you
I
get-
was
get
in a
back
rush,
into
I
normal.
didn't do it.
Okay.
But I
Minimize that.
That's on the
did-
expense side where
Yeah.
we
Yeah,
paid the,
I did do it, so right now we have, a little over $3 million still to spend, 3,022,425 to be exact.
So you figure we'll be okay on the
Yeah,
expense
there's
side?
actually two things that you have to adjust for. Have to adjust for Race for Country Club of
Right.
8,531,107.
That's on the-
And then
yeah, page
there's the 1,000,005 that we moved to capital, that's in
Right.
there under the capital account.
Where is that, Johnny? Can you identify the
It's
page?
10 million,
Yeah, give me a
You got it, Kev?
second here. I have it highlighted someplace.
Okay, you did yours at work. You got
Oh, it's
front
on,
and back. Yeah,
it's on page 23 at the bottom.
Thank you.
23?
That's 1,000,007?
23 at the bottom,
Yeah.
under capital.
What's that
reserve.
going to be, you think?
Just take a 1,000,005 out of that, so
Okay.
that'll give you
Yeah, I got it.
33,715
Okay.
there.
All right, good. Thank you. Okay.
There's some encumbrances I'll be closing up for the year end that will fall the fund balance and a couple of things like that.
You're so lucky with the ARPA funds.
Oh, Mr.
Two projects, right?
Okay, you're Mr. $33 million man over
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
But he doesn't have a report with only 2 line items. He's got a
Exactly.
report with about
That's what I'm,
2,000
that's
line
what I'm
items.
talking about, yeah.
Hey, in all fairness, the reporting part's a nightmare. I mean, the money's nice, but what we're doing by
Yeah,
doing our paving out of that is gonna make my life a lot easier.
Yeah.
Believe me.
yep. for
But
sure.
unfortunately, it has to be that way.
Yeah,
Can't just have,
no.
we've seen our neighbor abuse it, so.
That's the problem.
Yep,
And I'm sure there's more out there like that.
yeah.
Oh, yeah,
Just-
down in West
not just
Haven,
in- no, and I'm not speaking of I'm not speaking of state of Connecticut, I'm
Oh,
speaking
no.
Countrywide.
globally, right?
Let me see if I've got a calendar here, Kev. When we start thinking about the path forward, maybe I got one on the back of this thing.
Now, we're gonna cancel Monday night's meeting, right? Next Monday night.
Yeah. Because we met tonight, we got the chiefest
So-
thing early.
So let's.
If, hopefully he can
see.
still get it.
So you're gonna
Supply-
say this
some
one's gonna
things
be
are just-
I
canceled?
think I think that's there.
I think we ought to meet, I got a folder that has the dates in it, right? So I think it's July 18th is the one in July. I think it's important that we at least not right now say we're not gonna meet in July. Because,
Oh, yeah, no, we just said we're not gonna meet next week.
true, but I think I should, what I'm identifying, Kev, is I think we will be meeting in July, right? Because I think there'll be some things to be discussing at that point. So, I don't know, if you guys, any of you know you're gonna be on vacation, Kevin?
Yeah,
or Kev?
I'm actually flying to Ireland
Oh, that's nice.
Oh,
no, you're
cool.
not.
Vacation?
that night,
Vacation?
vacation.
Oh,
Well, you can
good
stop
for
in
you.
before you go.
Yeah,
So he's got a legitimate
Well,
reason.
Ajit will be back from India.
He's not, you're not doing a condo.
How about you,
thing
Kevin?
for
Yeah,
him?
yeah, right, right.
Do you know if you're
I'm
around?
good. What's the date?
July 18th,
Yeah,
I can
I'll
get
be
a
going the
calendar
latter
up.
part of July, first week in August.
yeah. Kev, do you know, are you in, you're taking some time?
I'm here unless, God forbid, something happens down south and I have to leave, so. As of now, I plan on being here.
Okay, all right. So you're gonna say, Kev, this one is, maybe I'm not, oh, I know what I did, I just, I
August 15th,
I
I'm
redid
not
the
here, but
date.
we'll cross that bridge. when
Yeah.
that
Yeah,
comes.
yeah.
Okay.
Well, August may become what we normally do in July.
Well, I know that Amity has that, what they do with the surplus on there in August. And I think that we probably in July could talk it through. The August one will be after, when they have the Amity meeting, you know what I mean, Jeff?
Or if we need it and there's a conflict, we maybe slide it to a different day.
Yeah, oh, all good, in
Yeah,
July,
yeah.
yeah. Yeah, well, maybe even, maybe with Kevin's plans, we might consider that, you know? I mean, I can grab a calendar if you wanna take a peek at it, you know, it's pretty easy to do, right? Just go here, and just slide this baby over, right? And you just kinda peek whatever you want, right? So here is July, right? I don't know how to make it bigger, team, so.
that's big enough, yeah.
And, so here's July. So we can see we got the third Monday,
If something popped out, we could meet the 11th if we
Yeah.
had to.
you know? What do you
If
think?
it's just a regular meeting, we don't wanna, make,
Yep.
Johnny, you-
It'll become a special meeting, so.
Right, it would be.
Anything you do needs to be on the agenda.
right.
Yeah,
Votes or anything.
okay. All righty. Well, we'll keep an eye on it, right? And work as a team, right?
Okay.
Who's PJ?
Listen, item number 9. Is there a motion?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion by Kevin, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Jim. Meeting adjourned at 8:56.
All in favor.
All in favor,
Yeah,
sorry.
thank you, Kevin. Keep
Aye.
the process
Can't leave.
going. Keep it fair, keep it fair.
Meeting adjourned at 8:56. Thank you.